RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com, now available at speciesnutrition.com. Realize, yes, Creolized Ultra Micronized Creatine Monohydrate available at speciesnutrition.com. Also, we have a limited time sale going on Protolize. Protolize available in vanilla, chocolate, cookies, and cream. Available for $29.99 while supplies last. All that and more only at speciesnutrition.com. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, competitions. Of course, this upcoming weekend, we have the Arnold Classic Australia. This past weekend, we saw the New Zealand Pro on RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel. We have an interview with Mo El Musawi, a full recap of the New Zealand Pro. We're working right now, actually, to try to get Brandon Curry on the show as well. He, of course, defeating Dallas McCarver at that show. As we now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, as we start to unwind from the Arnold Classic coverage and start to look forward to the rest of the contest coverage, a lot right now on RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel. Yesterday, you did a video on real or fake gear.
Yeah, it's been irritating the hell out of me, for so many years, it was just, bodybuilders got their gear from, either foreign pharmacies or U.S. pharmacies. There was some counterfeit stuff out there, but it really wasn't, most of the stuff was made by legitimate companies. Nowadays, the gear is made by people in their bathroom, or in the kitchen, whatever, and it's all underground labs, and there's no quality control in it, so we don't know what's in the stuff. So, my point was that, if you don't know what's in your stuff, you don't know where you're getting your stuff, you better test the stuff. Now, the best thing we got out there right now is the Roid test, which is a test kit that I sell at DavePalumbo.com. At least we could tell what's in the stuff we're using. Dosages and how much is in there is not available, but at least we can make sure that we're not using the wrong things. Once again, it's an unfortunate part of our sport that we have to use these substances, and that the government looks upon them as such a pariah of society that we can't, go out and legally buy them from a pharmacy. So I think that the topic might have irritated some people because it's a sore point for us. And it's not that I'm trying to make money selling these test kits. I don't care if you buy them from me or not, but I'm just trying to tell people how to be responsible about using these substances, especially if you're a woman, because we don't want to see you ruin your femininity by using the wrong compound. So it's like I said, it's a very polarizing type of piece I did, but I felt it was necessary to do it. Also, this whole week we've been putting up all the Arnold Classic content that we did from the expos, all the interviews, and they seem to be pretty well received. CT Fletcher one was tremendous. Johnny's got a few more he's going to be putting up. We just put Mel Chansey up with Karina Nascimento. So we got a lot of good stuff up on the site. The Hall of Fame. Johnny's reminding me. The Hall of Fame interviews that I did, which were the most, I forgot they were the best interviews of the whole weekend, which my Herschel Walker one and my Lou Ferrigno interview. So those will be going up this week as well. And then, of course, we have all our original programming. We have Iron Debate will be next week, but this week we have Iron Rage, which will be showcasing tomorrow. And, of course, we never miss Ask Dave. So, I think that the important thing is that we always have content up on the site, Sid, whether we have a busy weekend or not. That'll depend on what the content is. So we have a lot of Arnold content this week. Next week, we'll go back to our original programs that we might have skipped, like Iron Debate. And, of course, this coming weekend is the Arnold Australia, which is going to be a terrific show. And it'll be a show or a rematch of sorts. We'll see if Brandon Curry can win again and beat Dallas McCarver. So you'll have Max Charles in that lineup, of course, and Juan Morel won't be there. So it'll be a little bit of different flavor, but it should be a great show.
Let's get to the questions. If you want to ask a question, you can join us on the Muscle Central Forum on RxMuscle.com. If you're not already a member, it is free to register. You can ask your questions on our Instagram page, official_RxMuscle.com, Facebook, Twitter using hashtag AskDave, and of course on our YouTube channel. Let's go to Suzanne Blaylock, good friend of the show. I want to ask Dave about the dehydrated peanut butters where they take the fat out and add water back in. Seems like that defeats the purpose of eating peanut butter. Is there any place for them?
Yeah, I mean, you made a very good point. Exactly. Defatted peanut butter, some of them are, I think one of the versions out there is called PB2, like peanut butter 2. Defatted peanut butter basically takes away the whole purpose of why you're eating peanut butter, to get the fats in there, okay? So, and a lot of times these powdered peanut butters, they're actually adding sugar back. I know PB2 does that. So you're getting less fat, more sugar, which is what, as bodybuilders, we don't want. So yeah, I'm not into those powdered peanut butters. Now I have tried powdered peanut butter that was just powdered, and it was exactly natural peanut butter, same fat content, same protein and carb content. That's okay, but once again, the peanut butter is nice when you scoop it out, and you could or even almond butter, cashew butter. You put it in, you shake, you blend it in there. It's a tasty thing that you can do while you're dieting, and not have to worry about gaining weight from it. You know, assuming you don't eat the whole jar. Now I know a lot of people that these girls, they can somehow get the whole tablespoon onto the whole jar onto one tablespoon. Assuming you're eating the right portion sizes, however, it could be a great addition to any diet.
Let's go to MRC Shadows. Dave, on your keto diet, how do you know how much protein and fats to give each individual? And when shows are coming near, do you drop both protein and fats to get leaner?
I usually base it on body weight, and people always ask me, is it based on lean body weight or regular? I just base it on body weight. I usually do about 1 gram to 1.5 grams per pound of protein. Fats are usually 0.5 gram per pound. Maybe on men, I might go up to 0.75 grams per pound that they weigh. Carbs, obviously, depending on which diet I'm using on people. If I'm using a ketogenic diet, the carbs are just negligible. I do zero starchy carbs. Just the only thing you would get would be from vegetables. And I play around with those ratios, and I've been doing this a long time, so I kind of have an idea of what each person needs when I just look at their pictures. And obviously there's two aspects of coaching: knowledge based and experience. Not experience comes with years and years of doing this. You can't just buy experience. I've been doing this a long time, so I have a lot of experience and I have good instincts. People always ask me, why does Chris Aceto, how does he determine what to feed people? And I'm like, he doesn't even know. He just does it on instinct, because it's like an Italian woman cooking a pot of spaghetti sauce. She doesn't even know the ingredients she puts in this. She just kind of throws it in there. So having said that, it's important to understand that I can't quantify everything. I can give you formulas like I do, but then you have to take them and you have to improvise upon them, depending on the person you're working with.
Let's go to Kane Douglas Sonnet. Please ask Dave about being able to manage water, sodium, carbs, fat, protein intake over a two-day show format, not using diuretics, trying to look great for both days.
One more time, Sid.
So basically he wants to know how to manage water, sodium, carbs, fats, and protein intake over a 2-day show format, not using diuretics, trying to look great for both days.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go into this whole thing, because this is almost like, this is something that I would get paid to do, because I'd have to sit down and analyze. But when I'm talking, when I'm helping people for 2-day shows, what I usually do is I restrict sodium the day before the show. I usually put it back either that night or the morning of the show. I feed them sodium all day long. After the prejudging would be over, say, and let's say this finals for the next day, I'd allow the people to have some kind of a cheat meal, maybe a burger and fries. Then I would go back to clean eating the rest of the night. I would let them drink freely, for the rest of the night, and then use either a prescription or herbal diuretic. Assuming if the person doesn't want to use a prescription, you can use an herbal diuretic like Aqualize. And I would cut their drinking off around midnight of the night of the prejudging. And then so the next day they would wake up and they would repeat the whole process, putting the sodium back in again, and they would go and finish their finals whenever it would be. I would assume it's somewhere in the afternoon or in early evening. And that's how they would do it. But like I said, there's a lot of variables in there, and I have to sit down and map out how many grams of carbs and protein and fat I want to feed the person. Is it a girl? Is it a guy? I mean, so I can't give you a generalization, but I do, once I stop the person's drinking, I feed salt to the person, because I want them to rehydrate, and I want their muscles to stay full, and I don't want them to cramp. So once again, a 2-day. I've done shows with someone like the Arnold Amateur. They have prejudging on Thursday, and then the finals are not till Saturday. That's even more difficult because that's 2 days in between. That you really have to be careful with. So there's a lot of different protocols, and I offer a coaching service called Last Week Prep, and a lot of people sign up with that. It's $100, and I do the last week prep for the person. I show them exactly how to carb deplete, carb up, do what to do with sodium, when to eat, when not to eat, when to eat junk food, and I do all that, and that's worked out according to what division the person's in and what the person looks like.
Let's go to Lee Carter Fitness. What was your rep range for legs?
I was never a high rep guy. My body didn't grow like that. And I don't know if it was because I have a fast metabolism. I was the kind of guy that trained very heavy with perfect form, and I would go as low as 4 rep sets. And if I was trying to move up in weight, I might even do 2 rep sets. But usually 4 to 6 was I found was the sweet spot for growth for me. Now that's on the basic heavy movements like bench press, squats, deadlifts. On the exercises maybe that were like more, I guess you could call shaping exercises. I don't know, machine exercises. How about that? I would probably do more like 8 to 10 reps on those, because now I'm not stabilizing the weight with my body. The machine is doing that, so I can really focus on squeezing more, and I wouldn't be using as heavy a weight, obviously, with a machine movement, because I'm trying to isolate the muscles. So there's the free weight, basic movements, mass movements, are compound movements, and you're using multiple joints, and you're doing all the stabilization. And then you have the other ones, the machine movements that are more isolating to get the little small muscles. So once again, lower reps, heavier weight on basic movements, a little bit of higher reps, but I was never one to do 15 or 20 reps.
What's the lowest, this is from Jay Renoir, what's the lowest you would take days in a male during a contest prep over 200 pounds?
I don't take days. What's the question? Days
yeah,
off?
I'm not quite sure. What was the lowest you take? I don't know if you meant to insert something. Let's go to another question. Let's go to Ant Trig. Do you believe in calories in versus calories out, or do hormones play a bigger role in losing/gaining weight?
Well, we know calories are not all created equal, okay? And they did a study. I always talk about this is how I start my guru class every time. I talk about the study they did at NIH, where they took 3 groups of people who were obese, borderline type 1, type 2 diabetics. They said, look, we're going to give you 2 shakes, and at the end of this 8-week study or something of using these 2 shakes, we're going to measure your body fat and your weight and your waist circumference and all that stuff. And they basically say, we don't want you to do anything different. We don't want you to train if you haven't trained. We don't want you to eat differently. Do everything exactly the same as you've been doing. And all you're going to do is add 2 shakes to your daily meal. Now, at the end of the study, the first group, they all gained weight as expected, and their waist circumference got bigger because they were adding 400 calories. The second group, nothing happened to. They didn't gain or lose weight. And the third group lost body fat and gained muscle. And doing nothing, and what they did was they analyzed what the shakes were. The first group was taking in pure maltodextrin, or carbohydrates. We know carbohydrates make you get fat, and that's what it did. The second group was taking in a soy protein exclusively, and soy protein really doesn't have a muscle building effect, but it's protein, and protein is not stored very readily as calories, so the body just metabolized it or used it for whatever. The third group used whey protein, and the whey protein, because of the high branch chain amino acid residues, instructs the body build muscle and use stored body fat as a fuel source. And that was perfectly illustrated in this study because, remember, people weren't training more, they weren't doing cardio, they were just doing what they were normally doing. So foods can certainly influence certain foods, the foods that we call the positive partitioning foods, as opposed to the negative partitioning foods which store calories as fat. The positive partitioning foods tell the body, build muscle, use stored body fat as the fuel source. Lean sources of protein like whey, chicken, even lean meat, eggs. Okay, those are all positive food partitioners. The negative partitioners would be your sugars, your simple sugars, your fruit sugars, maltodextrin, very starchy carbs that spike insulin. Okay, and the same goes for drugs. You take prednisone and don't change anything else you're doing in your diet or your daily activity, and you'll get fat. If you take Growth hormone, however, and don't change anything, you'll get leaner. Okay, so hormones and foods influence, okay, what the body does, which tells you that calories are not important.
Let's go to On That Grind 2225. Dave, how long should you wait for testosterone to dip before going into a blood test for HRT?
A lot of guys have been asking me this lately. I don't know why, but if you want to have a low testosterone level on blood work because you want their doctor to prescribe you HRT, what you do is if you're on a cycle, just stop at cold turkey. Don't take HCG or Clomid, and just wait like 3-4 weeks. At the 4-week mark, go get your blood tested. I guarantee you'll probably be low, especially if you were on a testosterone cycle prior to that. That's probably the best way to do it.
Let's go to S. Coulter 90. Interesting question here. Dave, what's the best advice with dealing with never being big enough?
Welcome to being a bodybuilder, guys. That's yeah. You know, when I first started, I wanted to look like Rambo, you know, or Stallone in Rocky. When I got to that point, I wanted to look like Arnold, you know, after that. And then after I got to that point, I wanted to look like Dorian Yates. So we're never really happy with how big we are. And unfortunately, a lot of us get to a point where we get too big sometimes, and it ruins our shape. I think I probably got a little too big at one point. Even though it looked great, it was freaky, and the fans loved it. You know, it probably didn't help my competing. So when my best placings were actually about 10 pounds or 15 pounds lighter than my highest stage weight was. So how do you get, I don't know, you never really get it out of your system. You're never going to think you're good enough. I mean, and I guess if you think you are good enough, you'll probably stop making, you know, progressing and making gains. You can't obviously let it consume who you are. Because if it does, then that becomes a negative impact on your life, and then you're never happy, and you start doing obsessive things, and you start doing dangerous things, and that's not something that we want to see you do as bodybuilders. Bodybuilding should be a healthy, productive lifestyle, something that you can look forward to, set goals, achieve those goals, feel good about yourself. But if you walk around and you're never happy, I know guys that they can win shows and they come off stage and they're miserable. And I'm like, what's wrong? I look like crap. I'm like, you won the show, you know, and who cares? But, you know, everyone's mindset's different. You have to have the mindset of, hey, this is the hand I've been dealt genetically. I'm going to do the most with it that I can. And, you know, that's why people ask me if you have any regrets, if you want to go back to competing. I said, no, because I left nothing on the table. You know, I basically exhausted all my gifts. I worked hard, I ate right, I trained right, and there was nothing that I could have done that would have been better, that would have made me any better.
Let's go to I Am Crane. Dave, is using a narrow or wide stance on leg movements like a squat or a hack squat actually effective for targeting specific parts of the quad?
Yes and no. If you do close stance squats, okay, basically what happens is your knees basically go forward as you lower your body. That throws most of the pressure onto the front quads, you know, the four heads of the quadricep muscle, the vastus lateralis, medialis, rectus femoris, intermedius. So that's definitive. If you open your stance up wider than shoulder width, now when you lower your body, your knees are going out to the side. You're involving more of your adductors or inner thigh muscles and more glute muscle, okay, in addition to the quads. To me, that's a better movement because you're involving more muscle groups, and when people do that, they get a better, more complete development to their legs. People always think my legs are not big enough, I need more quadricep. A lot of times these people that think that actually have good quadriceps. They just don't have enough of that meaty inner thigh, that adductor compartment. And you can do all the inner out of thigh movements you want on those crazy machines. We call them the gynecologist machines, but you're still not going to put on the mass that you want. You got to squat wide stance, and even deadlifting wide stance will bring those muscles in as well.
You're watching Ask Dave on RxMuscle.com. Let's go to Chicken Cutlet. Dave and Sid, I'm getting hip replacement surgery done very soon. Is it in my best interest to get off the quote-unquote anabolic?
Sid, you were breaking up a little bit, so I'm going to need you to repeat that one more time.
Yeah, sure. So it's from chicken cutlet question is, so he's getting hip replacement surgery done very soon.
Yeah.
He goes on to ask, is it in my best interest to get off the quote-unquote anabolic chicken beforehand? If so, how many weeks in advance?
You know, it's funny because when my dad went for hip replacement surgery, the doctor actually gave him a shot of Deca-Durable 2 weeks before the surgery because he said it would help my dad heal better. So if you're on a cycle, you probably would just want to drop down to hormone replacement levels like 200 milligrams per week. I think that that'll definitely help you recover better from the surgery. The bad thing is if you go off your cycle completely, you might crash and your testosterone levels might be really low, which is not going to help the healing and recovery process. So I would definitely like to see the person stay on at least a hormone replacement dose.
Let's go to Wolf of Essex. Can you give me your peak week protocol for sodium and I know we had a contest prep question before. It was a lot more in-depth. This one is specific to sodium and potassium intake leading into a show and on show day.
It's very simple. I don't change sodium intake ever. The whole diet, I keep it high. Eat as much salt as you want. Make sure you salt your foods because we want to desensitize you to sodium. The day before the show, if you have a Saturday morning prejudging and on Friday morning when you wake up, I don't have anyone eat. I have people eat no sodium. In other words, no direct sources of sodium. Whatever's in the foods naturally, like eggs and chicken, whatever they have in there, that's fine. But no adding salt to anything. Usually at around 9:30 at night when I stop the person drinking the night before the show, that's when I usually I'll add one more meal that has some salt in it, just to balance them off and give them a little buffer. Because when you go to bed that night, Friday night, when you're going to dehydrate a lot. A lot of you've experienced before. You know, you go to bed, you're like, oh, I think I'm holding water. You wake up the next morning, you're flat as a pancake. You've lost 10, 15 pounds of water overnight from peeing 600 times. So to counteract some of that, I like to give a salty meal. Sometimes if the person's in crazy condition, I'll give them a burger and fries the night before. I won't let them drink anything while they're doing it, but it's once I cut their fluid at 9:30, whatever the time happens to be, depending on what prejudging is, then I will give them this burger and fry meal and let them go to sleep. They wake up in the morning, and then I put the salt, and then I make them salt their meals all day on the day of the show. Because remember, they're not drinking anything. You can't hold water if you're not drinking. But the sodium going back into the muscles, into the bloodstream, is going to keep the person well hydrated and prevent them from cramping.
Let's go to R. Schrockfit. Dave, best way to bring up underdeveloped abs?
Abs? You know, abs kind of thicken along with the rest of the body, you know. I always train my abs because I thought it was important to be able to, you know, to control them. But I think my abs grew the most from squatting, believe it or not, and deadlifting, because you're always bearing down on those abdominal muscles, and I think that heavy, massive weight just thickens the abdominal musculature. I mean, there's no way around that. I see guys doing rope crunches and all kinds of crazy stuff. Those things won't do anything, okay? The indirect work you're getting from your to your abs is far, far, far stronger of a force than you doing a couple, you know, side crunches or leg lifts. Although I like to do those movements so that I have abdominal control on stage, and that's an important aspect. You don't want to just let your stomach hang out and breathe with your stomach, because it just doesn't look aesthetic on stage.
Let's go to Undy_B. Dave, are there any artificial sweeteners that hinder ketosis or insulin levels? And he goes on to list sugar, alcohol, Splenda,
yeah, you know, especially the packets of like Splenda. Each packet. So if I know guys that will eat 20 packets a day, and that's 20 extra grams of sugar you're getting in per day. So you got to be careful of those packets. These sucralose they put in protein powders is fine because they're not adding, well, not every company, but like Isolyze, for instance, we don't add maltodextrin in there, so it's just the sucralose. You're not getting that extra gram of sugar. The reason they put that gram of sugar with all those packets is because there won't be any substance to it. In other words, there's not enough powder in there just from the NutraSweet because it's or the sucralose because it's so strong. So they put extra powder in there, and what they do is they put like usually some kind of starchy powder in there. The companies that are not cheap will use inulin fiber, which is a better source of carbohydrates because it's unabsorbable. It's a fiber source. So having said that, what do you do then? If you want to sweeten, your meals up, you can go buy like these stevia extracts to put a drop in. Just read the ingredients. As long as it's only stevia, then you're good. When you start adding, like I said, maltodextrin and sugars to the mix, those things can be deadly because they add up really quickly.
Let's go to Vlad_Calatin. Dorian Yates said the night before a show he'd take a couple of shots of vodka to flush out some more water. Was this because there were no diuretics around, or does it work just as well as, say, Diazide?
Alcohol doesn't work as well as Diazide, and it's certainly not as predictable. In some people, alcohol has a diuretic effect, and it could dry them out a little. Some people, it can make them, really too dry and too flat. So, to me, alcohol is not a good way to try to rid the body of water. If I'm going to try to get rid of some water, I'm going to use Diazide, because I know if I give someone a half a Diazide, I know exactly how it's going to make their body look. It's very predictable. Like I said, alcohol gets metabolized by the liver at different rates in different people. So the old Kevin Levrone, mix one shot of vodka with one shot of coffee, cappuccino, the day before a show, is just not going to cut it. In my book, I'm a scientist. I want things specifically laid out so that it can be reproduced time and time again. I think Dorian really needed a couple shots of vodka probably to relax him because he was very high strung.
We have another question about Dorian Yates from Dmitry Novikov, and just to answer it, we are trying to get Dorian Yates on RxMuscle. Let's go to D-Rock P87, and last time we addressed this, Dave, you had to be a little bit more tight-lipped about it, but now it seems as if the news is out. George Farah, of course, making the announcement, on his very own personal Facebook. So I think we could be a little bit more candid about it now. I want to know your thoughts on the sad news of George Farah having cancer. The community can do to help.
George, like I said, I've known George for many, many years. I remember the first time I think I actually met him was when he won his class in the middleweight class at the Junior Nationals. I can't even remember where it was, to be honest with you. It might have been North Carolina or something like that. And I was very impressed. I thought he should have won the overall, actually. And, George has been a guy who eats, he eats a really good diet. I mean, he's a clean eater. He's always, very lean. He's not a guy that's obese and who doesn't follow a healthy lifestyle. So when I heard that news, obviously, I was very shocked. Of anyone getting it, I wouldn't think it would be him. But, it might run in his family. I'm not really sure. I think he has a family history of it. And, you can't escape your genetics sometimes. So I hope, he says he has stage 4 cancer. I hope it's not that bad. I know he's a strong-minded person, and he's a fighter, and he likes to overcome obstacles. Especially, he loves to brag about it after he overcomes the obstacle. So I'm hoping, praying that George will be telling everyone about how he cured cancer 6 months, a year from now, because that'll be good news to my ears.
We'll take one more, and this is a pretty straightforward question out of Miss Tedwell, or Mr. Stedwell. Dave, is Dennis Wolf done?
It's a good question. I don't know. I would say no. I'm sure Dennis Wolf, in his mind, believes that he will come back, but I'm sure he wants to come back when he's ready, when he feels he can be competitive, win an Arnold Classic, win an Olympia. And, he had an extensive neck back surgery. So anytime you deal with the spine or nerves, okay, they don't just bounce back really quickly. They take a long time to regenerate. Sometimes they never regenerate. So I don't know what Dennis's status is. The last time we saw him, I think, was at the Olympia maybe. And he said, yeah, I'm coming back. He goes, I'm taking my time, though. And I believe he will compete again. Like I said, I don't know if he'll be as great as he once was. That only time will tell. And I don't know the extent of his injury, and how well the surgery corrected that injury. Because like I said, you could uncompress a nerve. It doesn't mean that the nerve will regenerate itself.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. Creolize Species Nutrition's ultra-micronized creatine monohydrate is available now at speciesnutrition.com. And, of course, Protolize now available for $29.99 while supplies last. For Johnny Styles And Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Baruki. We'll see you next time.